equity and access in the classroom, and also building a culture that helps children thrive. I need my next slide. Why can't I get my next slide? Here it comes. There we go. Always got to run into a little technical difficulty here. My play button doesn't seem to work. So when we first start thinking about inclusion, I want you to consider the environments that you have here. To be able to build a positive classroom environment, you've got to examine and reflect on your physical environment, your emotional environment, the social environment, and academic environment, and structure those specifically with your children's needs and your children's disabilities in mind. Today, we're going to look at just the physical environment. The next webinar will be the social and emotional environment, and then the academic environment we are going to take piece by piece. We're going to talk about differentiated instruction. We're going to talk about assistive technology. We're going to talk about all sorts of things, planning for success. We're going to talk about all of those things like reading with the basal and having lots of different levels. Those things that we'll address in lots of different upcoming webinars. But for today, we're going to look at the physical environment. First, before we get going, we're going to show you a video of some of our parents speaking out about why their children really thrive in an inclusive environment. And so we'd like you to listen to that.
UCP Bales provides an anxious-free environment, and that for Sarah is a complete gift because she has such a desire to please that she doesn't want the teacher to know that she's falling behind. UCP provides the individualized learning and attention, and again, the methods are adapted to the way she learns. And that helps her to be successful, which further builds her self-esteem for future learning opportunities.
I believe the way that she has been taught before didn't work out to her learning style. Here, it has been found. It's easier for her. She feels more comfortable. She just knows that she can do it. Something that she didn't before.
Okay, so I'm now looking for my next slide. And it's not there. We're going to talk about access. Here we go. Here comes my next slide. I can't move it. Let's talk about access for children who are in wheelchairs or who have some severe orthopedic difficulty. When you take a look at this young child, many times you might consider, well, I can't deal with that in my classroom. What you need to do is start thinking about your physical environment and how you can provide for this child. This little guy has as much of a right to explore letters and fulcrums than anyone else. And so making his materials accessible, making his space accessible is something that you consider when you're structuring your classroom as far as space is concerned and as far as who's going to assist him in that wheelchair so that he can access whatever it is that you put on his tray. If you notice, there's a cute little one sitting on the floor there with braces on his legs. He too has orthopedic difficulties, but his mobility is easier and better than the one that's in the wheelchair, except that I need, as a teacher, to make sure that I have the space for this little guy, and I have maybe a buddy with him in case he's got crutches that need to be placed behind him or out of other people's way. But he's exploring niches and physical properties right along with the others. Now, when I consider this young man, very, very capable young student, except he's got a brace on one arm. When I start thinking about he's going to sort out this mixture to discern what a physical change might be, what a chemical change might be, what the properties of all of these things that are on his desk, I need to consider, well, he needs to do what the others are doing, but maybe the things that he's sorting have to be slightly different. Maybe, and I'm taking a look at his cup, maybe his cup needs to be secured to his desk to make sure that he's successful. And so when I think and plan my lesson for all different types of children, whether they're physically impaired or whether they're slow learners or whether they have difficulty paying attention, I have to plan every single detail. Right now we're looking at the physical environment, but we leave nothing to chance. Everything is thought of and planned and provided so that they can be successful. And, of course, within a large group, and we do a lot of arts integration, so you're going to see them doing a little role-playing here, everyone is allowed and has access to that same activity. And so it might mean you got to move a few desks, and you've got to clear the area, and you got to make sure that someone is there to move a child that can't. And while I'm talking about moving furniture, sometimes we think about the desks in our classroom, we set them all up in September, and we say, this looks terrific. And it's like the couch in your living room. You don't move it until, well, you get sick of the way it is. Sometimes you need to move that furniture. And sometimes you think you have to write that down in your plans to say, if I'm going to do a skit, and I know 2 of mine are in wheelchairs, or 1 has a brace, or whatever it is, I'm going to actually feel comfortable and have thought about moving that furniture. Or, on my job list, I may have a couple kids who are responsible for moving 1 desk or 2 aside and moving it back. Now we're going to talk about children accessing the same environment in 3 different ways. Yes, and you also realize that learning doesn't take place just within the 4 walls of your classroom. So we're out in the pond right near our school, and we're discovering all sorts of life, plant life, animal life, and of course many of our children are pretty much able to go up and stick that net in and get whatever they find out without too much assistance. Of course, you got to give them a little bit of safeguard to tell them, you know, how not to fall into the lake. But other than that, they're pretty able to do it on their own. This little one needed a different net and needed a space and a buddy to make sure that he was able to catch something. And so he was able to access the same environment, and his education is just as important, and he's doing it side by side with his peers. The next one is the little one you just saw not too long ago in the wheelchair. He too has the right and the ability to be able to participate in this activity with the supports that we provide. And so he has an assistant that helps him. Now I'm taking a look at his net, and I'm thinking, gee, I might have wanted to give him a longer net so that it wouldn't be that much. But that's hindsight, right? And we think about that when after the lesson is through. But he was able to access that environment right alongside with his peers. Now, as I said, learning takes place in a lot of different places in the school. In the hallway, we have these young people who are coloring on the map of the United States. When I'm planning this activity, I'm going to think about my impulsive child, my attention deficit child, my child who needs more space than others. And I'm going to group my children and group the activities so that I'm not going to end up with a rich map. And so some of our children here are one on top of the other, and that's just fine. Some children may not be able to do that, and you'll have to send them out just two at a time. On the floor may not be the best place for some of them, and at another time, I'll take that map and glue it up on the wall so that other children who are able to color better this way than laying on the floor will be able to. But I will have planned that with specific students in mind so that everyone is successful in participating in this activity. Now here we go with a magnet under a table. Isn't that cool? Place to find some metal. This young boy can access that. And as they're sharing, he's going to want to talk about crawling under a chair and getting his magnet under there and finding a piece of metal. For some children, that could be a trigger to, gee, I couldn't do that, or wow, I really wanted to do that. I have no hesitation in grabbing that chair and plopping it on top of whatever desk child isn't able to or didn't get the chance to, and demonstrating that that can be done even if it's not under the table. Outside, this is a camouflage activity. So what the activity here was that we were exploring camouflage. And I had different colored toothpicks that we threw in the grass, and then children would go and find and collect within a certain timed period, collect different colored toothpicks. The goal was for the kids to discover that the green ones and the blue ones were not that visible, and the ones that they could quickly pick up were the reds and the yellows. Well, when we talked about that camouflage activity, we sat as a group and said, well, we have some students here with physical disabilities. And we as a group made a decision that they should get extra time. Because I knew if I sent them all out, there would be nothing left for those who were not able to run as fast as others. But the entire classroom decided on the amount of time and what would be fair and what would be equitable for all the children, and so they got an extra minute. And so we sent them out, they did their thing, and then the others joined them. And for the children who participated, they did two things. They learned about camouflage, but they also learned the fact that lots of different people have different kinds of talents and different kinds of abilities and disabilities, and that as a group, as a classroom, as a family unit, we make those decisions together. And that's what builds the culture in your classroom, that everyone has talents and everyone works together, and together we become a really viable unit that learns and is accountable for each other. Now, we've looked at different places, different areas outside the hallway, under the table, and so forth. Now you need to consider the mediums and modalities that you use. For some children, the electronic netbook or the computer is their way to learn, and they access that with confidence. Now, these little guys are sitting on the floor. For some of our orthopedic children or some of our impulsive children, we would rather have them in a desk. And we'll move those desks close to the floor so that everyone is kind of together in that group and no one feels like they're at a disadvantage. When we think about physical environment, many times we don't consider the lighting and the sound. I'm going to talk about this young lady here who has a figure ground problem. And if you notice, she's sitting closer to the windows. One of the biggest problems that she has visually is that you can see her filling in those islands there, because the circle was pretty easy, and you could fill that in. But she couldn't discern between what was the land mass of Florida and what was the ocean part, the Gulf, and so forth. So if you take a look, she started filling in the ocean with a piece of clay. If I had thought about this earlier, and now I'm looking at it again as hindsight, I might have wanted to color with a crayon the area that was Florida. Visually, that would have given her a better sense of where to put the clay. And so, on further activities, I knew that this young lady needed me to consider the figure ground and make sure that I made those accommodations for her to be successful. I sat her near the windows as often as I could because the natural light was better for her. At times you're going to have students that the fluorescent lights, particularly if you have a student who has ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder, the fluorescent light sometimes triggers things in their brain. And there was a young lady that the light glared on a piece of white paper, and that set her off. Behaviorally, I thought, oh my goodness, she doesn't want to do this activity. She doesn't want to do the work, where in essence it was the white paper and the fluorescent lighting. When we started putting her work on colored pieces of paper and we gave her colored overlays to read, there was no trigger, and this child was happy to comply with whatever it was that we presented to her. So lighting, figure ground, color, those sorts of things are examples of elements that you have to look at when you're talking about the physical environment of your classroom. Sensitivity to sound. We all know that learning sometimes is not quiet. But for some children, learning has to be more quiet because the sound that comes in is different, and it activates sort of things that gets them aggravated. And so sometimes the scratching of chairs on the floor is something way easy to ignore and all the other kids can too. And just somebody moving a chair brings about an enormous behavioral response from a young little guy, and you wonder, did I say something? And all it was a door closing, somebody's vocal tones are not right, their voice is too high, or even the simple, somebody moved the chair. And so a simple pair of earphones hanging around on your desk somewhere sometimes can help a child be successful and happy and compliant to most things that we do within the classroom. Enough space, and I'm going to talk about this as much as anything else, space. Sometimes our classrooms are very small. This young man needed space. He needed space to act out. The only way he was going to understand what he was doing or what he was reading was by taking it by chunks and chunking a paragraph or two and acting it out. He understood it after that. He didn't understand by just reading, and so we purposely moved the furniture aside in order for him to have the space to do this particular activity. I know that I'm moving through a lot of slides here, and I want to encourage you to ask questions and type out some questions there, and I've got a wonderful staff crew that's going to relay those to me. So as we're going along, you want to make a comment, you want to say something. We've got two young people here who are monitoring my screen and will throw those questions at me.
Thanks, Doris. I just have one question I'd like to pose to everybody, if you'd like to answer. Can anybody think of any other considerations for students in relation to their physical environment that we haven't mentioned or not actually done, but if anybody uses anything in their classrooms, it'd be great to share. If you want to type that out or raise your hand, and we can call on you, and if you'd like to use your audio, you're more than welcome for that.
I'm going to continue because I'm not done yet. And we're going to go to the next slide. So I'll take a break whenever someone asks a question, but I'm going to continue. I'm going to show you right now some different kinds of equipment that some of our orthopedic students use to have more access to their environment. And I want to talk about students in wheelchairs. In case you have a student that ends up in your classroom with a wheelchair, think about that child sitting in a chair all day. You wouldn't want to sit in a chair all day because you become cramped and so forth. They don't have the mobility to get up and walk. Some of them do, but it's painstaking. And so during the day, you want to give them an opportunity to be in a standing wheelchair, or be in a stander, or be in a gait trainer, or be in a walker, just because it gives them a different place, a different position for their body. If you take a look at this picture, this standing wheelchair will allow this young lady to access the bulletin board that we have about the scientific method there. We'll be able to access the smart board and do some interactive things. It will allow her, as she learns to move it, to move independently in the classroom. And so we want to encourage you that not only when the physical therapist shows up and says, okay, you got physical therapy time, but you as a teacher and assistant move that child that's in a wheelchair into different positions during the day so that they can get themselves in a different position to be able to move around. Here's a specially designed tricycle that we use, and we give our students an exercise period during the day. Because if you think about this child, when the others go to physical education, when the others go to music, when the others go to anything that's mobile, they don't get to move. And so we provide an activity period for them in some of these types of bicycles, tricycles, gait trainers, and so forth. And the next slide is a gait trainer, I think. Yes, a gait trainer. Gait trainer is slightly different than a walker. As you notice, his feet are tied so that they don't cross as he's walking, but it gives him a little bit more freedom, a little bit more independence in this apparatus. The next slide here that got there before I even looked at it is a slant board. And a slant board you can use for lots of different things. Remember the child we talked about with the figure ground and the lighting issues? Sometimes just tipping that paper slightly, putting the book on it with a different angle, sometimes that is all they need, and it maximizes their learning. And all of a sudden, things that they couldn't see before, they can, because the light's shooting in at a different angle. I use this a lot with my little left-hand writers. I have a little boy right now, when he's writing, his entire hand covers what he's writing, so he doesn't see the line at all. And so I gave him a slant board, and he was very thankful. And his mom, who's also a left-hand writer, came in and said, I use a slant board all the time. I just propped it up under a book. And so she said, I never even realized that that was helping my left-hand write. She says, other than that, I could turn my entire paper around and write on the side. So a 3-ring binder with a 3-inch or a 4-inch makes a perfect slant board for lots of different children of all different types. Your typical children, your little lefties, your children who struggle with hand-eye coordination and moving that around. That assists them in doing some writing or coloring activity. And now we have a video. We are going to show you a group of teachers that we got together this summer, and we emptied out our classrooms, and we brought together some stuff that is low-tech that you'll probably enjoy looking at. You might, you feel free to steal any of our ideas. And here it comes.
I need a lion. A ferocious lion. Let's see. Sammy, you want to be our lion? I need a lion. A ferocious lion. Let's see. Sammy, you want to be our lion? Okay, you're snoozing. Snooze. Let us hear it. Oh, he's so happy in the sunshine. I need a little mouse. Cece, you want to be the little mouse? All right, look at her. She's Little Mouse. What does the little mouse do? Who can tell me? Brennan, what's the little mouse do?
Crawl on his nose.
Yes, runs right across his nose. Run right across his nose, little mouse. And what does the lion do? Look at the words. What's the lion do, Lydia?
He waited and then he flashed his paw out and caught the mouse's tail.
How did he awaken though, Noah? Did he just wake up and go, oh, it's a bright sunny day?
No, he flashed his paw out.
No. What did he feel when he woke up, Nadia?
Furious.
He was furious. All right, lion, hit it. Wake up. You're furious. What did he do? What do you do? Go for it. Ready? How fast is he going to do it? Flash it. All right. Let's see how you do. Page 85 and 86. Get up there, lion.
You mean 80?
What I do? 85 and 86. You are the lion. I'm going to give you a mouse to have hold of. Are you going to be the mouse? Okay, he's got hold of her. Get up there. He's furious.
Grab your neck.
He's furious, and he has grabbed hold of you. Why are you hiding behind me? I don't want him mad at me. All right, you flashed and you grabbed hold of her. You can grab hold of her, just don't hurt her. Okay, what does she say? Let's give her her lines. Let's give her her lines. You have to know. She says it first. Page 85, let's give her her lines.
Kyrie.
Brennan, let go. She has to say some lines. Ready? Read it with me. What does she say? Oh, please.
Please.
Okay, let her say it.
Oh, please don't eat me. I'm just a little mouse.
What else does she promise to do?
I promise to repay you.
She got her lines
Someday.
pretty well, didn't she? All right, now tell me the lines that the lion says. Roar with laughter, lion. What does he say, Noah?
A little.
Listen.
A little.
Listen to Noah.
A little puny character.
A
little cutie.
How about if I make Noah be your voice and you just act it? Ready? Noah's gonna be the voice. You act it. Ready?
How could such a puny creature be any use to a king of the beast like me?
Good. Now your lines. Cece's gonna be your voice. Caitlin, ready? And now, what did the lion do? Look at the words. Look at the words. Look at the words. What did he do, Johan?
He yawned.
And?
He got tired.
No, he didn't. What are the words?
Okay.
Okay, lion, hit it. Oh, lion, do I need to find a new one? You have to. There you go. And he thought about it. All right, let's read the rest. Thank
I hope that video was enjoyable. We had fun making it. And now I'm going to consider some questions and just help you reflect on your own classroom and the furniture in your classroom that you may want to think about. So, as I look at my classroom in August and throughout the year, because this is a constant thing that moves, the furniture and things. So I look at it and I say, how does the arrangement of my furniture allow the movement to all areas and all materials in the classroom? So that means that the buckets that the kids put finished work in, the paper that's on a bookcase where you want them to, or pencils or markers or scissors, wherever you have your materials. It means, do I have access to the floor, the carpet, and so forth. Every single little piece of furniture in the room is placed with a particular thought in mind. Just today, I changed my room because I had set some desks in a way, and I had two kids that were sitting, and I couldn't see one as well, which meant that if I couldn't see them, they couldn't see me as well, and I turned everything around to make sure everybody was facing, and I could see their pretty little faces, and I could see their pretty little hands. And so that goes to number 2. Do all the children have a clear view of the board, of the teacher, or a visual stimulus? I also have to talk about people. Sometimes when you have teacher assistants in your classroom, they forget, because they're helping this little person, that there may be one aside of them or one behind them that they can't see. And so I have to train my assistants also to make sure that they realize that everyone needs to have a clear view. Number 3 says, do all the students have access to the materials in order to maximize independence? And so you have to think about those children who are disabled. How do I get them to be more independent? The disorganized child, the attention deficit child, the child who's got mobility issues, the child who's got just one hand, and so forth. Getting their backpack together. Does that child need a buddy to get that backpack filled? Is opening and closing a binder an issue? Well, I have to think through those things to make sure that everything is accessible, and I can do it to help this child maximize their independence. Certainly there will be things that they can't do, and then that's where you either set a buddy or a plan in place. And so not just the furniture, but also the materials are things you need to think about. And then you, the teacher, how accessible are you to each child in that classroom? How quickly can you get in and around the desks? How necessary are those children who are sitting in a particular place? Can you get to them as quickly or on a need basis? Sometimes you start putting things, well, the kids who are sitting in the back over here, they don't need me so much, but the kids sitting in the front, well, they need me a lot, and so they're going to sit in the front. You have to think also in terms of self-esteem, in terms of if all the kids who are students with disabilities who are sitting together may not be best for everyone in the classroom. Another thing to consider is, how does the furniture and the desk arrangement assist you in your behavior management plan? You're going to have those children who do not know where their body is in space. They're disorganized, they're all over the kid next to them. And so sometimes that child needs 2 desks. Yes, you're going to work towards hopefully getting them to consider 1 desk sometime during that year. But it's better to give them 2 desks than to have somebody next to them suffer and complain and have their materials all disorganized. Sometimes a child needs to be placed away from the door, and sometimes a child needs to be placed near the door, and sometimes a child needs to be placed near the bathroom. And so all of those things are things that you think about every day, and every time you plan a new lesson or a unit, or every time you get a new child in your classroom. And where your combinations are. How should you pair students with another one. When I plan my lessons, do I consider moving the furniture to accommodate different reading size reading groups and students in wheelchairs? We talked about moving furniture, but I want to talk to you about reading groups. And I know we have those really nice horseshoe tables, and they fit 5 to 6 kids pretty nicely. But suppose you end up with a reading group that has 6 kids in it, or 7. Or you end up with that kid that needs a little bit more space than the others. You have to plan in terms of, do I keep an extra little desk somewhere that I can tack on to the end of that U to make the U a little bit longer, to give that kid a little extra space? If I have a tiny desk and I can put that child's materials in that desk when I know that that child is coming, then that child is more organized and is more successful. So all of those things about moving furniture and having furniture available is something that you really should consider. Lighting and sound is the ones that we think about the least. And so we have to think about fluorescent versus natural lighting. And we have to think about beeping sounds and music and sensitivity to scratching chairs. The music piece, sometimes a tiny little bit of music, some classical stuff, some soothing stuff, some soft jazz, even some hard rock, whatever it is. Sometimes if you set that as the tone in your classroom and the voice levels can't go any higher than that, sometimes that helps too. Now, I've gotten to the end of what I wanted to discuss. I know that our next webinar is going to focus on the emotional and social environments, and those are a little bit more difficult to pin because it's not an actual concrete item. But we have some time to entertain questions if someone would like to ask anything. Okay, well, thank you for coming. The next webinar is going to be soon. I think it's going to be next Wednesday. There is a survey at the end that we'd like for you to complete. And so we appreciate your attendance here. Okay, I've just been informed that we are going to be emailing you that survey. And I've gotten confirmation that the next webinar will be next week at this time. Thank you for joining us.